So, yeah, so the question that was posed to us was, what is the legacy God is calling you to leave through your life as a man of God? To be honest with you, I'm not one that really spends time thinking about legacy, and I don't know if I've ever really sat down and really considered it. I guess now that you mentioned that I'm getting older and I'm sort of on the second half of my life, right? It's probably something that I should consider a little bit more. But I guess as I sat down to think about this, there are a few different thoughts, I guess, concerning the word legacy that just kind of came to mind. How do I want to be remembered? What lasting impact do I want to have on others or leave with others? And who do I want to leave this lasting impact with? So those are kind of like a few of the things. And I'm sure, when you have the word legacy, there's so many ways that, or different things that you can think about. But those are some of the things. And, for those of you who know me, like I'm pretty, I don't know, I like to keep things simple. I don't like to complicate things, right? I'm not too like overly ambitious, right? I'm just like, I'm not one to like try to rock the boat. So if you were to say like, oh, like you can be remembered as, oh, he was like a nice guy, right? He was just like a good guy. Like, I think I'd be okay with that, right? Something simple, right? Maybe there's like some, known by some, achievement or whatever that, accomplishments or whatever. And if those are some things that, I'd be fortunate enough where someone can rattle those things off, I think, I'll be okay with that, right? And I think that's how I've always approached it when thinking about something like this. But then as I sat down this week, I feel like, there's definitely more that God is calling me to leave in terms of legacy, right? I don't think he's going to be okay with just people remembering, he was a good guy, he was a nice guy, right? He didn't do anything crazy or bad or whatever. So just sort of now, like kind of thinking, like I shouldn't be just content or satisfied with just being, just say he's a good guy, right? Or if that, right? Like, so just kind of thinking how I can, in terms of this legacy, like strive to be more, right? Strive to give him more, right? And as I was thinking about that, this verse came to mind. It was actually a verse that we very recently covered in our Bible study that I teach. And I think it just encompasses everything that sort of, I'd like to, sort of, be remembered by, or just, and I'll explain in a little bit, but I'll just read Mark 12:30-31. Love the Lord. And this is, when somebody asked him, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment, right? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. And I was just thinking how awesome it would be if I was known, or if I was remembered simply as someone who loved the Lord, with all their heart, with all their soul, with all their mind, with all their strength. And I don't know if many people would readily say that as maybe like the first thing or the second thing or even the 10th thing or, whatever, right? So I feel like that's something that that I would like to strive for, right? And I think also like one thing that kind of popped up was like sometimes when you, I think it ends up being like, I guess like at funerals or when you remember, there's always like sometimes you hear of stories or other people's testimonies, right, of how they were so faithful to the Lord throughout their whole lives, right? And I'm sure we've all heard of stories like this, right? Usually I feel like it's like a grandmother in the family, right? Or like an old, mother, right? Who's sort of like kept, who like kind of like brought her whole family, to God and to the faith, and kind of kept the family to the faith, right? But whenever I hear stories like that, it kind of inspires me, right? To want to be someone like that figure, right? Someone who can kind of leave that legacy and just leave, kind of like, that impact, with your family, and obviously not just family, but to those around them. And yeah, I was just kind of thinking, especially on this Father's Day, how awesome would it be just to have that impact? Obviously, with those who are closest to me, they're going to be the ones who, hopefully have the greatest impact, right? Whether it's good or bad. And, I hope that, when you ask my kids, you know, like hopefully way later down the line when I'm gone or whatever, but, what was Dad like, I hope that it's not just, oh, he was okay, he yelled a lot, but he was nice most of the time, and he bought me ice cream, stuff like that, right? But how awesome would it be if somewhere mixed in there was like, yeah, he loved God, with all his heart, soul, mind, and strength. So just something that really just came to mind. And then lastly, kind of like what I was also thinking was, obviously, a lot of times, with legacy, I think it affects the people closest to you, right? Usually like your family and those closest with you. But, I think a challenge for me, because again, obviously, as I shared in the beginning, right, I'm sort of want to be just content and satisfied with just a little bit. But, how awesome would it be if that legacy could extend as far out as possible, right? Whether it's the people that I work with, people in my community, my neighbors, because I think it's sort of hopefully easier to have that influence and leave that lasting impact, with your family, with your kids, that small circle. But how awesome would it be if I can have that impact to more and more people, right? And I think that's the challenge for all of us, even as we're being encouraged now to share our faith with other people, with as many people as possible, to just kind of go, I guess, one step beyond that and to leave that lasting impact of being one who can love the Lord with all their heart, soul, mind, strength, and then to love their neighbors, right? To serve others and to love others as myself. Yeah, I think that would be pretty cool, and probably something that I've never really gave too much thought about. Again, I've always been okay with, he's probably a nice guy, and I think I would have been cool with that. But I think this is something that hopefully, not just myself, but I pray that all of us can be challenged by, that people can say that they follow this commandment, as best as they could. So that's it.
All right, so I have to change up my whole thing because Tom stole my my thing. I'm joking. But anyway, all right. So I had the same opportunity that Tom and Brian had to share our legacy of what we felt God was calling us to do. And kind of when I was thinking about it this week, the first thing that came to mind was just everything that kind of happened recently in my life, and kind of like what was like the sum total of it, which is I was dealing with a lot with anxiety this year, especially. And one of the verses that came to mind was Matthew chapter 6. Not the entire part, but like especially these last three verses, where it's basically saying just like, and basically what I wrote here is that the legacy God is calling me to leave behind is that of trusting in Him and trusting in His plan, understanding that my purpose is more than the dream of many of being successful, married, and having a family, or anything of that nature. But beyond that, no matter if I get there or not, that my calling is not to lead my life with fear or anxiety. It's actually kind of funny because me and my sister this week actually just watched the new Inside Out movie that came out. One of the main characters is anxiety. And what they do in that movie is actually pretty interesting. It's like emotions don't control you, don't determine who you are. And in that same way, if we are living with anxiety in our life, it doesn't have to determine our future. Just because we lose track of where we're going doesn't mean that we can't still get there. And I feel like, especially when I read this verse, and just kind of understand that God has tomorrow already figured out. And that doesn't necessarily have to be figured out in a way that I want it to be figured out. It doesn't have to be in the way that I see it. It's just in the way that God wills it. To continue, yeah, basically to lead my life with faith and thanking God for every one of his blessings, to understand that everything that I have planned out, that it could all be taken away the next day. And for that reason, not to worry about tomorrow, about where I will end up. Every day is an opportunity to be present to God and to be present for the people around me. To Tom's point, I don't have a family or children of my own, so it's not necessarily a legacy that I'll leave off to my offspring, but like just to my friends and my family, like how can I lead my life as an example to my friends and to the people who kind of look at me as like one of their only Christian friends and see how my life is a little different. And to that point, I always felt like, especially when it comes to my closest friends, where I see that a lot of them are lost, I'm lost in the same way, but it's the sense of peace that you can achieve when you lean on God. And for me, that's what I feel like my legacy is always about. Whether is it if I am chasing my dreams, like being an artist or being a musician, I could still showcase that peace that God gives me, that I might not necessarily be at the place I want to be now, but it doesn't matter, because as long as I'm happy in God and inspiring others to also chase their dreams and to share God within those gifts that, or the things that God has put in my proximity, I feel like I am doing the thing that I'm supposed to do, because it's something that you could see the joy come out. And if you're not doing anything, especially if you're doing something because you're forced to, you can see it in a kid, you can see it in a grown adult. Like, nobody likes to do something they're forced to, but that's why I feel like God has given us all something that we enjoy doing. And when we do it out of joy, that inspires other people to do the things that they also like to do out of joy. And it's just a great feeling to put smiles on people's faces, to bring joy to them, and to also let them know that it doesn't come from you, it doesn't come from me, it comes from God. So that's kind of the legacy that I have written down here. And I also wrote down that basically my legacy is to inspire others that peace is always in reach if you reach out to God and lean on him first. My legacy that is it's okay to dream and do the things that are in your proximity to achieve, because even if you feel like your purpose is to be solely in God, the way that you can work in God is still by working in the stuff that he gave you. So that's kind of what I wrote.
All right. Happy Father's Day. So I think I did this like a decade ago, maybe now. So, but when I was up here a decade ago, I was really talking about how being a father was for me really instructive in understanding how God could potentially be seeing me, right? That that I think the way that I grew up and not really seeing God as like a wrathful, vengeful God, I don't think I ever really had that to the full extent. But certainly never really understood till I had kids of my own just what complete love and devotion could look like, right? Where it was not contingent upon their behavior, not contingent upon anything else other than the fact that they were my children, so therefore they had my full love and acceptance.
And it was around that time that at the time our pastor, Pastor Mike, was talking a little bit about just the way that you grew up and your father figure can have a very meaningful impact on the way that how you would see God. And so what I wanted to leave as a legacy, frankly, was to give both Isaiah and Ellie just a genuine sense of what it is like to be completely and unconditionally loved. Not because I wanted to know that, oh, daddy loves me, but just very intentionally that if the gift that I can leave my kids is that they know, because at some point what I imagine happening is like right now, in many respects, I kind of am their God. Not right, but I think as parents you understand that you are their world. And I imagine that one day that is going to be diminished. And my hope is that as I, kind of like as John the Baptist said, I must decrease so he might increase. There comes a point where, wow, that was pretty weird. I am, but you know what I'm saying, right? That at some point when the faith becomes their own, what I don't want them to struggle with is the question of just, does God love me ridiculously? Is he always for me? And so this verse here out of Zephaniah, the Lord is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. And it's the second part that really is the key for today, is he will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. And so I kind of imagine this scenario where the kids are off at college, the faith is now becoming their own. They're grappling with temptations and sins, and they're working through life on their own. I'm now decreased, right? And the question, the legacy I want to leave is during those moments when they're lying in bed at night, during those moments where they kind of really screwed up royally, and they're wondering, does God love me? Like, I want them to just simply know yes. I want them to know, like, dude, he's rejoicing over you and singing over you. Like, I mean, that's a pretty crazy thought if you think about it. That literally, just like when you are singing over your child at night, that's how God is singing over you and singing over me. And to give them that legacy is going to be very powerful, because if that's how they see God. And again, in Zephaniah, it's only 3 chapters long. First 2 chapters, God is talking about like crazy destruction of people and just like, it's pretty violent, right? So, and then he moves on to, but those are for other nations. And then in chapter 3, the last chapter, he then moves on to his own people. And it's like, and then he's talking about how he was going to severely rebuke them as well. So it isn't that God is just happy, happy, joy, joy, love, love, and that there's no there's no bark to his bite, right? Or however the saying goes. But it says that in spite of all that, it always ends with his love. And so what I try and model for the kids is it always ends in love, right? It always ends in love. I will rebuke them, I will punish them, I will do whatever has to happen. But it always ends with, but I love you dearly, right? If you ask the kids, how often I tell you that I love you? A lot, right? A lot, right? And one is because I genuinely do delight in them. But the second one is, my thinking is, man, if they hear this all the time, then at some point they're going to get that that's how their heavenly Father thinks about them too. And that was really it. I mean, I think when I think about what I would want to be known for more broadly, kind of more to what Tom was having up there. And I want to be known as that guy who loves God and loves others. That's what I want to be known for. What I want to leave is an unshakable faith in my 2 children, And in my very humble opinion, that unshakable faith begins with having an unshakable understanding of how much God loves them. There's a quote, I think Tim Keller said it, that, you know, in talking about how you stay connected to God and about not losing your salvation and about whatever. And he was like, gosh, I'm going to get the quote wrong, but what he kind of said was, a superior faith in an inferior thing is not nearly as important as a inferior faith in a superior thing. You're like, that makes no sense to me. And so the example would be, if my son were to build his first chair ever right now, and I had full confidence that it can bear my weight, and I sit on it. I have all the faith in the world, but if that chair is not built right, it's gonna fall. However, if it's his 50th chair and he's building it great, and I'm like, oh man, this chair is not very good, the chair will still support my weight. And the idea is less about just how strong will they hold on to God versus them knowing how strong God will hold on to them. And if they know that even when they let go, even though they may not believe that they can hold on to God, they're ready to give up, they're frustrated, whatever it is, if they know deep, deep down that, well, God is still holding on to me, then I think that that's a super powerful legacy to leave behind. And that's what I hope that Ellie and Isaiah get, is that they have a God that, even after the rebuke, is going to then turn into song over them. So, thank you. All right.